Across the Desk
with Clement Manyathela
on 702.
So on our Across the Desk feature today, we are hosting people who have survived wild animal attacks. I have two people who have survived a shark attack. I have someone who was mauled by a lion, and I have another person who survived a hyena attack, and they'll share their experiences with us. And as I said to you earlier, not many people can say that they were attacked by a wild animal. And similarly so, not many people can say they survived an attack by a wild animal. So they're going to share their stories with us and how they've managed to deal also with the trauma that comes afterwards. If you have survived something similar yourself, I'd like you to give us a call on 011-883-0702. Alternatively, you can send us a WhatsApp on 072-702-1702. All right, let me introduce you to my guests now. So I've got Trust Ndlovu, who was attacked by a hyena back in 2003. Franz will be joining us for this conversation. We have Damon Kenrick, who was attacked by a shark here in South Africa many years ago, who's joining us. Damon, can you hear us? Thank you so much for making time. Good morning.
Yes, I can. Thank you very much.
We have Dave Pearson, who was attacked by a shark as well in Australia. Also the founder of a Bite Club, which is a support group for those who survived these animal attacks. Dave, thank you so much for also making time for us. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for having us.
And then lastly, we've got Richard Field, who was attacked by a lion in Botswana. Richard, thank you so much for also joining. Good morning.
Thanks, Clement. Lovely to be here.
I'm going to start with you, Damon, and I'll ask all of you sort of the same question of what happened. So what happened? Where was it? And how did you deal with it in that moment? And we'll talk about what happened next. But what happened and how did you deal with it in that moment? Do you remember?
I remember absolutely everything. It was actually 51 years ago yesterday, 13th of February 1974. And it was at Amanzimtoti, just south of Durban. And I was a surf lifesaver, and we were training for surf lifesaving. And we were about 25 meters offshore when one of the lifesavers said, swim for shore. And what I didn't realize was that he'd already been bitten on the knee.
Oh, my goodness.
And he was trailing blood. And I was swimming right behind him and tapping on his toes all the way back into the shore. And he put his feet down and ran out of the surf. And I was just about to put my feet down and run out of the surf when the shark grabbed me by my right calf and took my entire body and flung it back and forth out of the water and then dragged me under.
My goodness.
And I can remember the water coming up and my mouth sticking above the water and thinking that this is the last breath I'm ever going to take. It's more than just thinking you're going to die. You know you're going to die.
Do you feel pain in that moment, Damon? Because I imagine you're probably in shock. So do you actually feel the pain that I just lost a leg, or you are more thinking you're in survival mode?
Yeah, I don't know what it's really difficult to describe. I can say no pain, but you feel a very big force, something like a piece of iron being drawn to a magnet. It's just a big force is all I can describe it as.
Okay, Richard, I want to come to you now. You were attacked by a lion. This is in Botswana. What happened there, and what did it feel like in that moment?
It was. I was working as a safari guide up in the Savuti area of Botswana, and I had some guests with me, and we had been following the tracks of a female lion who had small cubs in the vehicle, and we eventually lost the tracks, or I lost the tracks. I was the guide, but I lost the tracks, and so I did what a lot of guides do. Just hopped out of the car just to check which direction the tracks went in. and, eventually found her tracks heading off into the bush, and I was going to hop back into the car. But before I did that, I heard a little rustle in the bush, and I thought, oh, and she, like, I just thought, my training told me she was going to stop, and she didn't stop. I just felt her on me, and it was pure shock, just absolute disbelief that she was on me. And then it occurred to me that I needed to fight, although I was like about 70 kilograms wringing wet and had never punched anything in my life, but that was what I tried to do. And, but it didn't work out too well. And then she ended up biting me on the head. And when I felt her teeth on my head, that was a really powerful moment, because all the fear just disappeared. There was no more fear. There was an acceptance and, just a huge sadness and a really big feeling of loss. And it was really quite a profound moment where I could see all the really most meaningful things in my life flash before my eyes. It wasn't all the things that I'd done in my life. It was all the things that I hadn't done in my life that flashed before my eyes, which was quite a deep moment of regret. And, so yeah, there was no physical pain really in that moment. It was, cause I was it was almost like I was outside of my body. There was just in my head, whirring around in my head.
So how big was she, and what saved you in that moment?
So she was 140 kilograms, 150 kilograms, big adult female, lion. And so, I was very fortunate to have some guests on the vehicle. The lady watched me walk back. She saw the lion run out. She yelled at her husband to drive. He jumped into the driver's seat and pretty much drove straight at the lioness. And so together they managed to chase her off. And they did all the right things without putting themselves in danger. So, I was really amazingly lucky to have them on board.
Yeah. And then what about you, Dave? You were also attacked by a shark. This was in Australia. How did it unfold for you?
Just a normal afternoon surf that you have after work on a Wednesday, and just paddling back out. I'd had a brand new surfboard. I was pretty keen to be out in the water. There was no sign of anything in the water that shouldn't be there, but, sharks are there all the time. And I was just paddling out after, I think, my third wave, and the thing just come up from the bottom. And many things actually went in my favour. One was I wasn't looking directly at the front of my board where the shark come from. I was looking off to the left-hand side. So as the shark come up with its mouth wide open, its bottom jaw hit my surfboard, and its teeth got stuck into the surfboard, and its top jaw hit me in the side of the head, which sort of knocked me out to some extent. And as it flipped out of the water, and it sort of upturned my board, and my left arm went down into its mouth, and the shark went back underwater and took my surfboard with it. And it was when we were down the bottom, I could see like lots of bubbles, something really big in front of me, but I couldn't make it out because our eyes don't work that well underwater. And then we just parted ways. It was just like a short wrestle under the water, and I'm saying maybe it was just trying to get away from me because it had a fiberglass surfboard stuck in its mouth and a human. And we just parted ways, and I swam back to the surface and proceeded to look at what had happened to my left arm, and it had basically tore the forearm muscle off. And eventually I found out there was a lot of tendon damage, and it had actually broken my neck when it hit my head on the way through. So, I was kind of damaged, but it was getting out of the water where I had more of an issue. There was a few other guys in the surf with me. One of them was shouting out to me, and I said, look, I'll meet you out on the beach. And I proceeded to try and paddle in with one arm. I tucked what was left of my forearm together and put all my weight on it on the surfboard to try and stem the bleeding a bit. And unfortunately, I got hit by the first big wave that come through, and then proceeded to get hit by the next 3 or 4 after it. And it was when I was on the bottom of the ocean seeing stars and starting to black out that I realised I was just about to die. And it was like Richard said, it's quite a profound moment. You go, wow, I'm going to die today. And I was quite okay with that. I thought I've had a pretty good life. And at that moment, I thought about my family, my immediate family, my partner, my mum and dad, my kids, and I went, not today. I can't die today. And I just felt the sand under my feet and pushed as hard as I could. And the next thing I was back on the surface and then proceeded to try and put everything back together again and slow the bleeding down. And I was quite fortunate because two of the guys who had seen what had happened had actually paddled over. And they eventually helped me get out of the accident and administer first aid and basically saved my life.
Sure. Yeah, Dave, I think you also saved your lives in some way to be so resilient in that moment and want to fight. I mean, I would have given up a long time ago, probably. I want to bring in Trust Ndlovu now, who's in Limpopo. Trust, how are you? Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm all right, Trust. So you were attacked by a hyena in Limpopo. This was in 2023. What happened? Were you sleeping? Were you working?
The thing was security company. Kawia security company.
Yeah.
The company mainly for the clients who hire.
Yes.
So they were hiring different places. Yeah. Then when there was someone at my place that next to Mapungubwe,
Yes.
who was going to off. Then my boss told me that no, you are going to Mapungubwe to change someone for 7 days. Because the person who was working there at Mapungubwe is going to off for 7 days.
Yes.
So and that Mapungubwe, then it was during morning. Then when I reached Mapungubwe, they showed me all the paperwork. How the client came in, you are signing here, the books, everything. They didn't tell me about how are we staying at the farm, what is dangerous, what is I didn't know anything about that. Then I worked there from 10 to 10 morning up to 10 night.
Yes.
Then after that I dismissed. I wrote a report properly. Then from there I go to the room where I'm staying, where I'm told that when you dismiss you are going to sleep in.
Yeah.
It is a small compound. But that compound, the only thing, that compound doesn't have a fence inside.
Doesn't have a fence. Okay.
And that was, I heard that it's a big 5 game. But there is a compound inside that game. Doesn't have a fence. You get me? Then when it was hot, it was too hot. Then I slept inside the room, but opened the door because it was too hot. When it was past, I think it's roughly past 12 midnight. I heard something is eating me. I was in fact, I was slapped on that head, flat. In fact, I tried to fight with the thing. The thing was on top of me right now.
Yo, and is it dark that time, Trust? Was it dark or could you see?
It was dark. Tried to fight and shouting to help, shouting for help for the people. Until that thing takes me inside the room, pulls me outside. Outside, take me. In fact, it was lucky I'm alive. Because that hyena wants to eat me. In fact,
yeah,
I'm very lucky. because he put me inside the room. Took me, maybe it should be 400 meters away from the room.
Yeah.
Going with me to the bush. When I tried even to shout to others, can you please help me, please? Can you please help me? Even here at my finger, I tried to open the mouth so that it can release me. As a pole next to the end of the pole at the end of where the compound is. I grabbed that pole with my feet. That's where managed to run a little bit and wait for me. And the other people, they were worked up. Try to test that hyena now. And they were afraid to come to me because that hyena was next to me.
So, So when they were up, they were scared to come closer to you because they thought they would be attacked by it.
Yes. And I was like someone who was drunk on that time. All over there was blood, all over. Walking to the people like someone who was drunk. All over it was blood.
So it managed to bite you. Where did it bite you?
The hyena.
Yeah.
Inside the room.
Yeah. Did it bite your head? Where were you bleeding from? Was it on your head? Was it on your arms? Yeah.
The head, the left hand, and the head, and the eye. Even my one eye of mine is not working right now.
I'm getting goosebumps just listening to your story, Trust, and all the stories from Damon, Dave, and Richard. And this is where I want to go to next, Damon. Because that's a moment it happens, and then you have to now think about this moment and rationalize it and make sense of it. Did you feel the trauma afterwards when you were rationalizing this, Damon? Did you feel like, I don't know, is there trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder that you deal with after such a significant moment like that?
Difficult to answer. I've often said I never had PTSD or anything like that. There is always some element of trauma that remains. But my brother was the person who saved my life first by putting his surfboard leash around my leg as a tourniquet to stop the bleeding. And I remember looking at his face, and his face was just horror. And I was on the beach, and because I was a trained lifesaver, I knew what was going to happen, the processes, what they were doing, why they were doing, and that was kind of a comfort because they were doing all the right things in the right order and all of that, and I sort of knew the process and the protocol. And I was on the beach for half an hour, and the local doctor came and put in a drip in my arm with dried human blood plasma. And then I got loaded up in the ambulance, and that's when my parents arrived. And my father was just ash colored. He was just in shock, and my mother was hysterical. And I remember turning to my brother and said, "She is not coming in here with me." And he said, "No, I'll go in there with you." And a drive that normally took, 45 minutes in a car sticking to the speed limit took 7.5 minutes to get from Amanzimtoti to Durban. And my parents were behind the ambulance at one stage doing 180 k's an hour, and they lost the ambulance. It was going faster than that.
Yeah, sure. And Richard.
But,
Yeah.
No.
And Richard, for you,
Continue with Richard.
did you have to deal with that afterwards? Like, I mean, that's a traumatic thing. Like, do you even want to continue doing that kind of work?
it was a big question for me, and initially I didn't want to go back and work in the bush, but at that point, I guess I had some blame on the lion, because I'd always been trained that lions are going to give you a warning growl, and that a lion will give you a mock charge. They're not going to come with a full charge. They're always going to stop as long as you stand your ground. And as far as I was concerned, I'd done all the right things, but she'd still attack me. And so there was I didn't understand that. It was only when I had someone very forthrightly tell me that I'd put myself in that position and that I needed to accept responsibility for the attack that I could actually, it sort of dawned on me that, I could potentially go back and become a safari guide again as long as I made a different decision, But I would say definitely I didn't know about post-traumatic stress, not in relation to that kind of thing, but I certainly experienced it. And, I had had different times where driving in a car, I'd be sitting at a stoplight, and I could visualize the car driving into another car and having a big accident, and I could actually feel the shards of glass falling on me. And I was thinking to myself, wow, what's going on? I don't know what's going on. And it was really because I just wanted to get on with my life and become a safari guide again. And I didn't really want to tell the story. It was too traumatic and I didn't understand it. And I was, 25 years old and a young man in the wilds of Africa. So it was very, not a, there wasn't a lot of opportunities for psychological help or anything like that. Not that I would have taken them anyway, because I would have probably been too proud. But it certainly, once I started talking about it and owning my own situation and accepting it, it all changed a lot. But that took me about 15 years.
Phew. Wow, yeah. And for you, Dave?
I was quite surprised when I first suffered my first post-traumatic stress attack, and it took me by surprise. It wasn't there was no warning that I was suddenly going to feel like my life was about to end, and this was quite a few months after my attack, and thought I was doing really well. I was back at work. I was physically starting to get a bit stronger, and then all of a sudden it felt like my life fell apart, and I didn't understand what was happening to me at first until I went and spoke to the right people, and that's what the diagnosis was I was suffering from post-traumatic stress. And what the issue was, and it's not that the shark attack's the worst thing that's ever happened to me, but it seems to be the one that's brought back all the other traumas in my life, and they're the ones that are now getting to me. But as Damon said earlier on, the younger a person is, I think the better they're able to deal with it. And it'd be something I would love to study, because we have many young members in our group, and our youngest member was attacked when she was 6 years old, and she has done really well. And a lot of our young kids have also done really well. So that's the secret I think we need to figure out, because I think as we get older, we know what our mortality is, and especially when you're faced with close death, and you realise all that you've got to lose. And, as Richard said, when he was laying there, he felt sadness because he's just realised what's going to be missing in the rest of his family's life and what he's going to miss out on. And I think that happens as we get older. We end up with more things to live for. So we have more skin in the game when it comes to loss. Yeah. And when we start realising we can lose all that, it's very painful.
Absolutely.
And I think, that's why we suffer a bit older.
All right, it's 10:32 now.
Cross the Desk
with Clement Manyathela
on 702.
22 minutes before 11 o'clock on our Across the Desk feature this morning. I'm hosting people who survived wild animal attacks, and I see your messages that are coming through. I'll ask some of the questions that you have. You can call us as well if you've got a question on 011-883-0702, or if you want to share an experience. The WhatsApp line is 072-702-1702. We've got Damon, who was attacked by a shark. Dave was also attacked by a shark. Richard was attacked by a lion, and Trust Ndlovu was attacked by a hyena back in 2023 in Limpopo. And I want to come back to you, Trust, before I go to questions from some of our listeners. So you explained what happened to us. And because it was at night, were you able to see this hyena and how big it was as it was attacking you?
Yes. I recognize that is hyena.
Oh, so you knew that it was during the attack?
Yes. Yeah, when the time it released me, I saw that is hyena. Yeah, even though I was having blood all over, I saw that is hyena.
Oh, and did you feel pain in that moment as it attacked you? Because you're saying it also dragged you, like you could feel your eye was affected as well. So when it was dragging you, or did you feel the pain much later after the attack?
I felt the pain later.
Yeah.
Later.
Okay. And then were you affected at Trust about work? Like, did you still want to work in the farm, or were you so traumatized that you decided, I don't want to do this ever again? I don't want to work in an area like this, which is so dangerous.
I'm still working at the farm, at that firm company, because I'm poor. How can I feed my family? I still need to feed my family.
Yeah.
So I have to work.
Absolutely. And are there more protections there? Like, so that you don't, get attacked again? Is there a fence now? Is there more security?
Yeah, right now, they've sent me to a driver. They sent me to a driver for deploying security on different places.
Okay, got it. Trust Ndlovu, thank you so much for sharing that experience with us. Let's go to your calls now. 011-883-0702, your inputs, your questions that you have for my guests as well. Let's start with you, Balisa, who's calling from Waterfall. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement, and happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's, Balisa.
Clement, I just have a quick bitten by a lion, right? I once saw you do that famous lion walk, and I thought Clement is out of his mind. But I started this year with doing the lion walk. And now I want to find out from him. They say it's safe, but it bit him. And he was trained. He knew exactly what to do. Is it really safe, or are lions just wild animals we simply cannot trust?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question there, Balisa, in Waterfall. Richard? Because you did mention earlier as well that you went down and your training said she will stop. So she won't continue charging at you when you do certain things. And you did exactly what you were trained to do, and yet the attack still happened. So should we just stay away from these wild animals, because you can never really know for sure?
It's a good idea to stay away from a female lion with tiny baby cubs. That's certainly a good suggestion. But I think the most dangerous lions are the ones that have lost their fear of humans. When you go into really wild areas, the lions are wild, and if they see a human, they'll actually try and run away. They want to get away. They see us as a threat. But if you go to the Joburg Lion Park, that there where they associate humans with food, that there is dangerous. So you have to even lock your doors at the lion park. I wouldn't go to the lion park. I'd be crapping myself. But I'm happy to go to the bush and see some proper wild lions.
So I'm just thinking now, because I did a thing called a walk with the lions. Like, we had 3 lions that were so huge that we were walking with, and while they were enjoying their lunch and we were so close to them, and now I'm thinking, maybe that wasn't the best idea after all. There's a question here as well that's coming for you, Dave and Damon, someone from on the WhatsApp line, who's asking about the shark attack. Did you see how big the shark was? And also they want to know, what kind of training are you given to be able to avoid an attack of that nature? We'll start with you, Damon.
No, I didn't. The water was very murky. There'd been floods and things like that. The water was muddy. It was dusk. So these are the perfect conditions for shark attacks. So everyone says, you're told punch it in the nose or stick your finger in its eye or something like this.
Oh.
But, when you're being flung around,
Yeah.
like, as, like a dog shakes a toy kind of thing, a piece of rope, as a 14-year-old kid, there's no ways I had the strength to fight back. Absolutely impossible.
Yeah. And Dave?
Yes, I actually did see mine. When I got back on the surfboard, I was looking at the damage to my arm and the water turning red around me, and there was a 3-meter bull shark swimming around underneath me, and they are quite a large fish. As for fighting it off, I didn't really have time, but I think the bonus for me was its nose hit me in the side of the head during the attack, and the first place you can hit a shark is in the nose or poke it in the eyes or wherever. And I think that was fortunate for me because they don't like to hurt their nose. And it hit my neck, it hit my head quite hard, which, as I said, it damaged my neck quite severely. So I guess I was very fortunate that happened as well. But, yeah, I mean, I've talked to hundreds of shark attack survivors, and one thing you do realise is, as humans, when we realise we're about to lose our life, we'll fight with anything we've got and, yeah, poking it in the eyes, grabbing its pectoral fin, anything you can do is going to give you a better chance than doing nothing.
It's 14 minutes before 11 o'clock. After the break, we'll take some more questions from our listeners. 011-883-0702. WhatsApp's on 0727021702. What question do you have for these people that have survived these wild animal attacks?
Across the desk
with Clement Manyathela.
on 702.
It's 12 minutes now before 11 o'clock. Oh, we've been having such a fascinating chat this hour on our Across the Desk feature with Damon, Dave, Richard and Trust, who have survived wild animal attacks. And yeah, I can see how shocked some of you are. In fact, on Twitter and on the WhatsApp line, a lot of you are saying, wow, it's so crazy that I've always thought these things happen in the movies. And here we are, talking to people that were attacked by these wild animals, and them telling these stories is just so surreal. Tusa says, Clement discussing things that I thought only happens in movies. Yo, this is shocking. That's Tusa there on the WhatsApp line. I've got a question here for you, Damon. Someone who wants to know how are you adjusting to your new reality? And I know that there are some incredible things that you've done, including also swimming from, was it Perth? To Rottnest Island, and how long was that? So the question there though is, how did you adjust to your new reality after losing your leg?
I have a very good support network in my family. My family were very good. I was brought up in a swimming family, and probably the two who were the most support were my mother and my brother. But my sister and my father were there as well, so that helps. I went back to springboard diving, and I dived springboard diving on one leg, and I represented Western Province for 9 years in a row at SA Champs. And in 1984, I came second in the RSA Cup Open diving competition. I made a decision very early on, in actual fact, when I was lying in intensive care, that I was not going to let this affect me, and I was just going to do whatever I did before. And it's the way that I've lived my life ever since then.
Yeah. And then, Richard, someone also has a question for you here. Says, please, Silo, who says, please ask Richard Clement, what advice does he have for some of us who go to these, areas in the bushes where we get warned that you must close your doors because there are lions around. So what advice does he have for us in an event that we interact with a lion?
If you happen to be walking through the bush and you hear or see lions in the bush, the one thing that you have to make sure you do is not run. You don't want to run. If you start running, then if they are potentially afraid of you, they won't be afraid anymore, and they're going to start chasing you because that's just their instinct. And so you want to stand your ground. If they do charge at you, you still have to stand your ground, even if it's really scary. The more you stand your ground, the more likely they are to stop and then back off. And then as they're backing off, you can back off as well. But those are all the theories. Obviously, that didn't work for me on the morning, but I just gotten too close to a particular female lion who had tiny cubs, and so I think anybody who knows anyone who's a mother and they know the protective instincts of a mother, that it's they can get pretty aggressive.
Yeah. I've got a question for you, Dave, about wild animals. Someone wants to know what did this experience and the experiences of other people who have shared their stories with Bite Club, what does those experiences teach us about these wild animals? What would you say are the lessons here?
Similar to what Richard just said, we're at the mercy of a wild animal. They're apex predators and they hunt for a living. Every day they're out hunting for food. We don't do that all the time, so we're not fully aware of what happens. So wild animals need to eat, and we're not on their menu, luckily, but on some occasions we actually are. And it's on them occasions that we're totally outgunned by the power of the wild animal. And we've got to be careful when we're in their environment. As Richard said, when we're in the bush, and we've got to understand how lions work. When we're in the ocean, we've got to understand how sharks work as well. And they are stealth hunters. So you will not see usually the shark that gets you. You won't see it circle like it does in the movies. It'll just come and get you. So you've got to be aware of things in the ocean. Like if there's lots of fish in the ocean, then chances are there's bigger fish eating them little fish, and that brings the sharks around. If there's lots of bird activity because there's fish eating other fish, it's a warning sign. So I guess the best thing we have is to try and use our own intelligence and our own skills to keep away from a situation which could end up with us and an animal having an interaction which we're totally incapable of fighting back for.
And Dave, as the founder of the... Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead first.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to that. We as human beings think that we're at the top of the evolutionary chain. But when we're in the animal's environment, we're just the next meal, and we're just part of the food chain. And there is nothing more humbling than realizing that you're just part of the food chain.
Yeah, it is so humbling. Oh, it is so humbling. Dave, tell us more about the experiences that are often shared in the Bite Club. This is a support group, obviously, for people who've been attacked by these wild animals. What kind of stories are you hearing there, and how important is a support system like that? And why do you think it's so necessary for people that have experienced these?
The support system first is really good, because you can start having a conversation. And I've met Damon and I've met Richard, and the first time I sat down with Damon, and usually when we first meet, we tell each other our stories. I guess it's not unique to us. When someone tells us their shark attack story, I've got one of those as well. So to me, it doesn't shock me. To me, it's interesting to see how Damon's life went so much forward after his shark attack, and how much he did not let it affect him. And to me, that's what I take out of all of our meetings. And the same with Richard. I was in awe when we sat down and had dinner together, and he told me of all the great things in his life that have happened since that moment. So our attack stories, yes, they're scary to a lot of people, and they're scary to us too. I've heard some of the most horrific stories you could think of. But for me, the positive we get out of it is when we're doing it with each other, it's not unique. And I'm not listening to Damon's story so I can go down the pub and tell my mates this great story, because I've got one of them stories. I'm listening to Damon's story so that we can share some of what Damon's successes and failures have been, and I can learn from Damon, and Damon can learn from me, and Richard can learn from Damon and me, and I can learn from Richard and Damon. So it's just a circular support system that just makes it so much better.
Yeah.
And when we all hang out together, we have some of the most fun times you could believe. And it's just because we've all got that horrific instance in our life that brings us together as common people.
Yeah, true. Well, gents, thank you so much for...
Can I add something? Can I just add something there, Clement?
Yeah.
For me, when I got attacked, it was 1999, so there was no social media. There was no one spoke about my attack. But I know that when people get attacked by a shark or, any sort of animal attack these days, and it spreads like wildfire through social media, and everybody has their opinion. But behind all of that is someone who's had a major trauma, and all their family is having a major trauma. And I think, there's massive value in the bike club, because people, there's just that support to get through all of that commotion and all that drama, and everyone's kind of been through something like that, or there's a lot of understanding there, a lot of very helpful people who you can listen to and get understanding from.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, gents, thank you so much for making time for us, and we're really glad that you lived to tell this story. It really is. I was just getting goosebumps throughout listening to you tell the stories, and listening to how in that moment you still were able to try and fight it and survive. Damon, Dave, Richard, and Trust Ndlovu, thanks to all of you for making time for us. It's 2 minutes.